You ever had someone smile at you while stabbing you in the back, with a gold-plated pen? That's how I describe Daniel Cross, our vice president at Greystone Consulting. To everyone else, he was the guy. Charismatic. Sharp suits. Perfect LinkedIn posts about leadership and integrity. But to me, he was something else entirely. My mentor, my ticket to the top. And, apparently, my biggest mistake. My name's Alex Rivera, 27, senior analyst at Greystone. I'm the type who triple-checks the numbers, stays late polishing slides, and still thanks the janitor on the way out. I worked my way up from an unpaid internship, no Ivy League degree, no fancy family connections. Just grit, caffeine, and the belief that effort means something in this world. Daniel loved to say I reminded him of himself. He'd pull me aside after meetings, clap a hand on my shoulder, and say, "Alex, you've got the fire. Don't let the suits smother it." And I believed him. God, I needed to. Because in a company where last names open doors, he made me feel seen. For a while, he was the only one who did. We worked closely for months on a major client pitch, a $2 million proposal that could make or break my career. I poured everything into it. Late nights, weekends, even skipped my sister's wedding planning to finish projections. Daniel reviewed every slide, every stat. Said he wanted it to be our masterpiece. The morning of the presentation, I was buzzing with nerves. The whole executive board was there. CEO, CFO, the works. My heart thudded in my chest as I clicked through the slides, explaining the numbers with the precision of someone who'd memorized every pixel. Then, right as I finished the last chart, Daniel leaned back in his chair, smirked, and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Well, at least it looked professional." Shame about the logic. Laughter. From the boardroom. From the people who decided promotions. My blood ran cold. I stood there frozen, humiliated, as he casually picked apart my work, the same work he'd approved. Every correction, every error, felt rehearsed. Like a performance. When it was over, he patted my shoulder and whispered, "Don't take it personally, kid. It's just business." But as I packed up my laptop, something in his voice, too smooth, too confident, caught me off guard. Because for a split second, when he thought no one was looking, I saw his smile falter. His eyes darted toward the CEO's laptop screen. And there it was. Something small, almost invisible. A flash of panic. Just enough to make me wonder if Daniel Cross wasn't everything he claimed to be. The Monday after that disastrous presentation, the office felt different. Or maybe I did. People still smiled in the hallways, printers still jammed like clockwork, and Daniel Cross still walked through the glass doors like he owned the oxygen inside. But every laugh that followed him sounded a little more hollow to me. I kept replaying that smirk, that calculated joke he'd made at my expense. The same man who'd once defended me in meetings had turned me into the punchline. Maybe it was just business. Maybe I was being sensitive. That's what I told myself, right up until the emails started disappearing. It began small files from the client pitch missing from the shared drive. My own presentation notes overwritten with older drafts. I thought it was a tech glitch, until I found one of my data models attached to an internal memo, under Daniel's name. He brushed it off when I asked. "Relax, Alex. Just copied your spreadsheet to illustrate a point. You'll get credit when the time comes." His tone was smooth, reassuring. Too rehearsed. Later that week, during our one-on-one, he leaned forward and said, "You've been quiet lately. Losing your edge." The way he said it didn't sound like concern. More like a warning. Still, I wanted to believe him. He'd been my mentor. My bridge into this world of tailored suits and strategic smiles. Without him, I was just another overworked analyst clinging to a rented apartment and a dream. But then came the charity gala. Greystone held it every year. An elegant affair full of donors and investors. Daniel asked me to help prep his speech, said he trusted my eye for detail. I stayed up half the night perfecting it. When he took the stage, I watched from the back, smiling as the crowd leaned in to listen. Except, line after line, word for word, it wasn't his story he was telling. It was mine. The anecdotes about my first big account, the late nights, even the joke about my caffeine addiction. He said it all like he'd lived it. Like it was his struggle, his triumph. The audience loved him. Applause thundered through the hall as he raised his glass. And in that roar, I felt something inside me fracture. Quietly, cleanly. Afterward, he found me by the bar, grinning. "Your good luck, Alex. Stick with me and you'll go far." He tapped his glass against mine and walked away. But the words rang hollow. Because for the first time, I didn't feel lucky. I felt used. And deep down, I knew the cracks in Daniel's perfect image weren't just in my head. They were starting to show. You ever wish you could unsee something? Because once I found out the truth about Daniel Cross, I couldn't look at him, or myself, the same way again. It started on a random Thursday night, 2 weeks after the gala. Everyone had gone home, and the office was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. I was buried in quarterly reports when a notification popped up. An email meant for Daniel accidentally forwarded to me. Subject: regarding verification request. Cross, Daniel M. Curiosity prickled at the back of my neck. HR never emailed the VP directly. I clicked it open before I could second-guess myself. The message was short, clinical, terrifyingly clear. We were unable to verify the degree and employment history listed for Mr. Cross. Please confirm alternate documentation. I read it 3 times. No degree. No record. Nothing. I sat there frozen, the cursor blinking like it was mocking me. Daniel Cross, Greystone's golden boy, the man who'd lectured me about professional excellence, might not even be qualified to intern here. At first, I told myself there had to be a mistake. Maybe the university database was old. Maybe HR typed his name wrong. But the longer I stared, the colder the air around me felt. The next morning, I tried to confront him. Subtle, careful. "Hey Dan, weird thing. HR sent me something by mistake about degree verification." He didn't even let me finish. His smile dropped for the first time since I'd known him. "You shouldn't be reading emails that aren't yours, Alex." There was no charm in his voice now. No warmth. Just steel. He leaned in close, his breath brushing my ear. "If you value your job, forget what you saw." Then he walked away like nothing happened. I sat there, heart hammering. Because now every weird thing, the stolen credit, the disappearing files, the mocking joke in the boardroom, it all clicked. He wasn't just using me. He was hiding behind me. He needed my numbers, my work, my reputation to keep his illusion intact. And I'd been feeding it to him like an idiot. That night, I stayed late again. Not to work, but to dig. I checked old records, alumni databases, even LinkedIn history. His supposed alma mater had no record of a Daniel M. Cross. His previous employer? A company that didn't exist anymore. Everything about him was smoke and mirrors. By midnight, my hands were trembling. Not from fear, but from fury. The man who humiliated me in front of the board had built his entire career on lies. And as I stared out the glass window of the 18th floor, city lights blinking below, something inside me hardened. The confusion was gone. So was the denial. All that was left was purpose. I didn't go home that night. I just sat there in the darkened office, the city glowing beneath me like 1,000 indifferent eyes. My hands shook as I scrolled through file after file, every click confirming what I didn't want to believe. Daniel Cross, the man I'd trusted, admired, even defended, was a fraud. Somewhere between disbelief and rage, the exhaustion hit. All the nights I'd stayed late for the team. All the weekends I'd sacrificed because Daniel said, "We're building something real here, Alex." Real. What a joke. By 3 a.m., I was just empty. My chest hurt like I'd run a marathon underwater. I wanted to quit, walk out, disappear. Let him have it all. The company, the glory, the lies. Maybe that's what he counted on. People like me giving up. I don't remember falling asleep, but I remember waking up to a text from my sister. Maya, proud of you, little bro, mom would have loved seeing how far you've come. Simple. Unassuming. But those words cracked something open inside me. Mom. She was the reason I worked this hard in the first place. She used to say, integrity isn't about who's watching, it's about who you are when no one is. And here I was, watching someone pretend to be everything I'd fought to become. I stared at my reflection in the office window, tired eyes, crumpled shirt, but something new behind the fatigue. Not rage. Not pain. Focus. I realized Daniel hadn't just humiliated me. He'd made me invisible. He'd stolen my voice, my work, my dignity, and used it to build his empire. But that was his mistake. Because he taught me every trick in the book, every loophole, every tactic, every presentation move designed to impress the board. And now, I could use it all against him. That's when the shift happened. I wasn't the naive analyst anymore, desperate for approval. I was the insider. The one who knew exactly where the cracks in Daniel's armor were. I cleaned up my desk, slid my flash drive into my pocket, and made myself a promise. I wouldn't expose him out of spite. I'd expose him with proof. Undeniable, career-ending, boardroom-level proof. I'd take my time, build my case. Watch him dig his own grave, one lie at a time. When I finally left the office that morning, the sunrise painted the skyline gold. And for the first time in weeks, I smiled. Because Daniel Cross might have mocked me in front of everyone. But soon, everyone would see who the real fraud was. And I swore, quietly, deliberately, that I wouldn't rest until they did. I didn't rush in with a dramatic email blast or a viral LinkedIn post. Revenge, I'd learned, is an architecture, not fireworks. So I built a blueprint. Secure the receipts. I copied every file Daniel had touched that related to my pitch, version histories, comment threads, metadata, timestamps. I pulled server logs with Priya from IT. She owed me a favor after I covered for her in a performance review. Priya found what I needed, repeated downloads of my work from Daniel's account at odd hours, and edits attributed to him that had originated from my workstation. Digital fingerprints that would survive a liar's story to corroborate the lie. I spent nights combing alumni registries, court records, and corporate filings. The supposed former employer Daniel bragged about? A shell company registered under a different name, dissolved years earlier with no employee list. The university he claimed? No record. No thesis. No commencement photo. I made clean, printable copies, screenshots with timestamps, certified email chains with HR, and archived web pages showing the inconsistencies, line-up witnesses. Daniel's confidence came from one cruel truth. People wanted to believe the golden narrative. So I quietly asked for the truth-tellers to speak up. Marcus, a junior counsel in legal who had been sidelined by Daniel's politicking, agreed to listen. Priya vouched for the logs. 2 ex-colleagues Daniel had mentioned at the gala, people I reached through LinkedIn messages and careful calls, confirmed he'd once woven the same tall tales to them. I didn't ask them to lie. I asked them to remember. Build the payload. I assembled everything into one airtight dossier. Timeline, evidence, witness statements, and a short, clinical slide deck that told the story without emotive flourishes. No theatrical language. Just facts. I timestamped each piece so nothing could be dismissed as altered after the fact. The stage. Daniel loved ceremonies. Promotions, speeches, public accolades. They fed his performance. He was planning a high-profile board update next week, a presentation to finalize his promotion to senior VP. Of course he was. Of course he thought he was untouchable. I rehearsed my reveal like one of my old presentations, opening with context, moving through painlessly logical steps, and ending with the conclusion no one could ignore. Marcus agreed to be present the moment I handed the deck to HR and the audit committee. Priya would pull the access logs live if anyone tried to gaslight the timeline. My sister, Maya, texted encouragements that felt like armor. Meanwhile, Daniel kept smiling. He sent a firm-wide memo about leadership values and asked me to help proof a line in his speech. He bragged to our team about the promotion as if it were already his crown. On the night before the board meeting, I sat alone at my desk, the dossier glowing on my screen. My hands were cool. My voice was steady. The ache from betrayal had turned into a precise, practiced calm. Tomorrow, the presentation he thought would seal his future would be the moment everything he built on lies began to loosen. And I would be the one holding the ruler. The boardroom smelled like polished wood and stale confidence. Morning light slanted through the blinds while the executive table sat like an altar. Daniel arrived in his usual armor. Pressed suit, practiced grin, the kind of man who rehearsed pity as a gesture. He took his seat at the head of the table, unaware that the room was baited. I walked in with the dossier under my arm. Marcus was there, hands folded, expression neutral. Priya sat at the laptop, fingers already on the audit console. HR had brought a silent representative. The audit committee's eyes felt like spotlights. Daniel smiled at the familiar faces, and I watched that smile for the last time. He opened with his speech, slick slides, big words about vision and legacy. He laughed at jokes he'd plagiarized from me. The board responded the way he'd trained them to, approving nods, impressed looks. Then I asked, in the calmest voice I could manage, if I could speak. The room shifted. He blinked like a man waking. I set my deck on the table and clicked to the first slide, a timeline. Dates, file versions, server logs. Priya projected the live access logs so everyone could see edits appearing under Daniel's account but originating from my workstation. I walked them through the year he couldn't prove, a diploma that returned nothing, a non-existent employer, emails from HR requesting verification that had gone unanswered. Daniel's posture changed gradually from confident to taut. He tried to laugh it off. There must be a clerical error. He reached for the playbook. Blame someone else. Call it a mistake. Marcus spoke next, steady. He'd been approached by Daniel with the same stories, same CV, years ago. Two former colleagues recounted their conversations, their voices small but precise. The evidence was surgical. It left no place for theatrics. Panic made him clumsy. He lashed out, hurling the old line he used on me. Don't make this personal. The irony was so thick it cut. I watched his eyes scanning faces, hunting for an ally. There were none. When the HR rep read the verification email aloud, word for word, the sound of it echoed off the glass. The CEO closed his folder slowly, like someone reading a verdict. Daniel's grin dissolved into the naked, ridiculous thing it was, a mask slipping off. The consequences cascaded. Immediate suspension. An internal investigation. Legal counsel called. Offers that had been dangled like trophies evaporated in the space of one breath. A man built on applause now faced the void of silence. But the fall that hurt him most wasn't the loss of title. It was the unraveling of the gallery of admirers who retreated faster than they had praised. The investors who toasted him at galas turned away. The junior staff who once sought his approval stopped answering his messages. He had fashioned his life from other people's trust, and now that currency was worthless. At the end, he stood alone in the glassed-in room, hands empty. For a sputtering moment he searched the faces for something. Remorse, support, a single smile to salvage him. There was nothing. He mouthed one word, a small human sound that had never once touched his lips before. Why? No one answered. The silence that followed wasn't comfortable. It was absolute. It felt like justice, yes, clean, inevitable, and cold. But as the room exhaled and papers shuffled, I didn't cheer. I sat very still, the echo of his mockery from months ago running like a tape in my head. When Daniel left the building that afternoon, he walked without his old swagger. The gold pen stayed in the drawer. The office that had once felt like a stage for his performance returned, quietly, to its ordinary rhythm. I packed my bag and walked out into the late sun, the city washing over me. The victory tasted like relief, and something quieter. The knowledge that exposing a lie doesn't fix the nights you lost, but it does stop the lie from stealing the next person's morning. 3 weeks after the boardroom implosion, Daniel Cross was gone. No farewell email. No LinkedIn update. Just an empty office with his nameplate quietly peeled off the door. 4 days, the company buzzed with whispers, HR meetings, compliance reviews, hushed elevator talk. Everyone wanted to know how the golden boy of Greystone had fallen so fast. But I didn't join in. I just kept my head down, doing the work that used to be stolen and smiling at the irony of finally being invisible on my own terms. The official statement said he'd resigned due to discrepancies in credentials. That was corporate speak for caught red-handed. They didn't mention the humiliation, the shock, the disbelief in the eyes of the people who'd worshipped him. They didn't need to. The silence said enough. When I walked past his old office one morning, I noticed the faint square on the wall where his framed degree used to hang. Beneath it, a faint outline of dust, the ghost of a lie. It should have felt like victory. And, in a way, it did. The sleepless nights, the humiliation, the mockery, it all led here. Proof that the truth still matters, even in a world built on PowerPoint slides and charm. But there was something else, too. A dull ache that sat where the anger used to live. Because behind the lies, Daniel had been right about one thing. We were alike once. Ambitious. Hungry. Desperate to be seen. The difference was, I built with truth. He built with mirrors. And mirrors always break. In the weeks that followed, Greystone shifted. The culture changed subtly. More transparency, fewer egos. Marcus was promoted to legal director. Priya got a raise. And me. I got the role I'd been chasing for years. Project lead. Not because I played the game, but because I refused to. The morning I signed the new contract, I slipped my old flash drive, the one that held every piece of evidence, into a drawer and shut it softly. It wasn't a weapon anymore. Just a reminder. That evening, I stood on the rooftop terrace overlooking the city. The same skyline that once mocked me now felt like mine again. The wind carried the hum of 100 offices below, full of people chasing their next promotion, their next applause. And I whispered, mostly to myself. In the end, truth doesn't shout. It waits. Then I smiled. Because somewhere out there, Daniel was learning that lesson the hard way. And me. I was finally free. If you've ever been betrayed by someone who wore a smile while they cut you down, tell me in the comments. How did you find your revenge? Or your peace? And if you want more stories where truth wins in the end, hit subscribe. Because this isn't the last time a mask will fall. You said.